I'm not joking, guys, when I say that this deck takes absolutely zero skill. I'm not very good at the moment because I'm a bit out of practice, and even I have been winning at 100% win rate with this from like 3 to 6k, 100% win rate. And quite honestly, it is nutty how good this Chargla deck is. It kind of revolves around the Heroes Resolve PvP modifier that we currently have right now. But honestly, it's just about spamming units. Let's talk about the deck. Cavernous Mists, 1 gold. That's the best PvP relic for Charlga. Essentially, what you're saying is that your leader costs 1 gold, which is very good for Heroes Resolve. We're running Bramble Burst on Quillbore. Why Bramble Burst and not the others? Well, Bramble Burst is good in the meta right now for a couple of reasons. Murloc Tidehunters with Bubble are very meta, and this immediately gets rid of their Bubble. And then also, it's very good versus Gnomish Cloaking Device Stealth. It's also quite good versus Huntresses that have Stealth as well. So the poison is just very good utility-wise. I'm running Tendon Rip, but honestly, either of these can work really well. But I like Tendon Rip versus Hogger because it just slows him down a little bit and can kind of set you up to defend against Hogger decks. Bubble on our Murloc Tidehunters, Gnomish Cloaking Device on Safe Pilot. Doesn't really matter what you run on Chain Lightning. They're really there for well pegs. So really, Storm's Reach, you could run Brilliant Flash if you think that the stun's going to be more useful. Just depends on what you feel fit. And then also Mighty Throw on Griffin Rider. Very, very cool deck. Let's get into analysing some games so you can see how it works. All right, the first game that I'm going to show you is a Grommash game, which is quite fun. I am not kidding you when I tell you that this game takes absolutely zero skill, or this deck takes absolutely zero skill. Really, all it is about is just knowing how to react. Now, here's a good example of how the Bramble Burst affects the Murloc Tidehunters. We were able to get a really good trade with Murloc Tidehunters there because the Bramble Burst basically pulled off their bubble instantaneously. Now, obviously, he has also dropped a Huntress and his own Quillbore in this situation. Huntress is going to clean up pretty nicely. We don't have a great answer to Huntress with our current setup right now, so we're just going to kind of wait. The best answer that we have to Huntress is, you've probably seen me do it before, you drop a Griffin Rider and then you drop a Quillbore behind, just turn the Huntress away to make sure that the Griffin Rider stays safe. But we're a very cheap deck, so we can take bad trades here and there because it doesn't matter because we're kind of a really cheap deck. You'll notice that I don't actually use Vultures a huge amount. You should try and cycle Vultures back into your deck when you can. The reason that you should try and cycle Vultures back into your deck is primarily because it puts a 1 cost back in your deck. The way that Charlgas passive works in the same way that your normal cards work. When you use a card of a specific cost, it will cycle that cost back into the deck. So you kind of have 2 deck costs, essentially. At least this is how I think it works. You have your cost deck and you have your card deck, and your cost deck, you still need to cycle those costs back into the deck. Now, as you can see, we are just like at this point spamming units, like really spamming units on this guy, because you kind of can, like, you just have these units that take really excellent trades most of the time, which usually means that you have a bit of a gold surplus to work with. The primary goal of this deck is to just like basically cycle Chargla out as much as possible, because as you can see, my Chargla is already now level 14. We've cycled her out 5 times in this game already, and we're already starting to deal damage to the base. And one of the reasons that Chargla is good, again, another example of how the Bramble Burst works really well against enemy Murloc Tidehunters. The reason that Chargla works well is because she does percentage damage. So if you can actually get her onto a base, she's actually very, very effective at taking the base down. You have to be a little careful versus some people, because what will happen with some decks is they'll have really big spells. Like, I'm going to show you a game later where even though we won, it was hard because we were getting like deep breathed a lot. So like good clearance spells can sometimes be a pain. So you do have to kind of like split your units up across the field if you can help it. But already up to a level 16 Chargla now, and you're going to start to see she'll really start to chunk the base out. Not that it really matters. We're at that point now where we're kind of already won. We're just chipping damage away over the course of this game. But yeah, just a really strong deck. We're going to go have a look at a couple more games now as well. All right, this one is versus a Bloodmage Thalnos, same level. What I will say about Bloodmage Thalnos is I'm going to kind of show you why this deck's a bit of a meme and why Bloodmage Thalnos decks in general are a bit of a meme. The problem with leveling Bloodmage Thalnos up, and like on paper, it makes sense in this particular modifier to have Bloodmage Thalnos be a relatively good option. But the problem is that even if you level Bloodmage Thalnos up, he's still really squishy. And so he will just die to a Quillbore and a safe pilot most of the time. And you've already spent gold leveling him up. So the problem with Bloodmage Thalnos decks in general is that you're spending 4 gold on Bloodmage Thalnos, but then you're also spending gold to level him up. So even though I spent 5 gold to kill him, so I spent my Quillbore and my safe pilot to kill him, it's either a gold equivalent or a gold negative trade for him, depending on how much he's actually spent to level that Bloodmage Thalnos up. Because the whole point of this deck is that you get like some sort of raid boss Bloodmage Thalnos, and it becomes a nuisance for your opponent to deal with. But Bloodmage Thalnos just doesn't get that good. Like, it's not like you're leveling an Abomination up, but that becomes harder and harder and harder to kill. You're leveling Bloodmage Thalnos up, which is, not that big of a deal. Also, good reason, even though we had the safe pilot nerf, Necromancer still basically one-shots it, so Necromancer's still, I think, going to struggle in the meta just a little bit, but nonetheless, we have Chain Lightning for this reason, by the way. Wellpegs is basically the only thing we end up using Chain Lightning on, and again, we just randomly send stuff. I mean, I wish I could tell you there was some sort of strategy going on here, but there wasn't. I was just randomly sending stuff left and right. I have gold to spend, I put stuff on the field. If there's no immediate thing to react to, I just randomly put stuff down, and of course, when we're running things like Vultures, clearly, with the current Bounty Hunt passive, going to be a bit of an issue if you give too much gold over to your opponent, but you end up getting such good value trades out of it anyway. It's kind of insane. But yeah, another good game. Also shows you kind of why Bloodmage Thalnos kind of sucks. This is kind of a good one. This was a tough game versus Hogger, but it's a really good one to show you because it's going to show you kind of how insane this deck can get if you keep going and keep going and keep going in a game. So I just like to, it doesn't really, I don't really know why he polymorphed that. It didn't make much sense. He just essentially spent 6 gold to deal with 3 gold. Going to use the Bramble Burst. We're seeing Bramble Burst a lot across the board right now. And also going to show you why Vultures are quite nice here into this Hogger matchup. Charlga is very good against Hogger. You lock Hogger down, Hogger can't move and can't get towards the base. We then have a massive flock of Vultures heading towards the enemy base right now. Now, we get immediately wiped out by a Deep Breath, and that's what I mentioned. There are certain spells and units that are going to be very annoying for you to deal with, but that's okay. Now, we split our Murlocs up here because, again, we know that there's a problem with Bramble Burst. It can basically make your Murloc makes your Murloc talent kind of useless, but nonetheless, we're just going to keep going here. You're going to see Vultures and Charlga enough to just deal with Hogger by themselves. We're waiting for a response, which we get. We are actually going to Chain Lightning to reveal the safe pilot. Not high enough level on Charlga to take it down with 1 Chain Lightning just yet, but it's a good test. So we know probably at the next level of Charlga, it's going to be much easier. Now, he does the same thing here. Like, this is just a very, very standard response to a Griffin Rider. You just drop a Quillbore behind it, and yeah, it doesn't become a problem. But we're still maintaining control. You've seen we're putting a lot of control on this gold mine here. We're stopping him from farming wherever we can. And if he has to use Deep Breath to kill 5 gold's worth of minis, when it's not, in my eyes, not really a problem. Now, we're going to end up killing this Griffin Rider, thankfully. I'm not going to be too fussed about the safe pilot just killing off those Murloc Tidehunters. It's really not that big of a deal. We're going to let Charlga herself now deal with that by herself. He's now seen an opportunity to go for the Hogger, but honestly, Vultures, Murloc Tidehunters, enough to deal with Hogger at this level. We are out-cycling and out-leveling this Hogger player at the moment, and you're going to notice that Charlga is going to start to get real beefy real quick. Going to use Chain Lightning. The reason we do that is just because we're actually more concerned with stopping him from generating gold through mining. So he hasn't been able to generate gold for quite a long time. We've just seen him use his Murloc Tidehunters. He's now going to safe pilot, which is fine, but we're going to immediately use our own Chain Lightning to reveal a safe pilot and continue to threaten his base. Now, while his base is threatened, this is where we're going to start looking to get some mining done, because he's now in reaction mode. He's trying to react as much as possible to what's going on near his base, and that's going to give us an opportunity to kind of go for the mine on our side. He will then probably get away. I don't even think he gets 1 mining here, because we can just very quickly respond to the mining with our own Murloc Tidehunters. We're not going to bother using Chain Lightning there. There isn't really much of a major need. And he's now seen another opportunity to try and go for the Hogger, but, we've got a Charlga. We're going to stop that Hogger right where he stands. We use the Vultures as well. We're actually going to safe pilot his safe pilot. We don't actually use safe pilot that much. It's a good reactionary card when you need it. It's not necessarily useful all the time, but that, you know, again, you won't cycle that 3 cost back into your deck if you don't use the safe pilot, which is kind of okay if you're looking to just cycle Chargla as much as possible. Now, he's used Polymorph. I think he used it on my Miner, which basically indicates that he's essentially given up. And now I have a level 17 Chargla pushing onto the tower. We're going to continue to send stuff down both lanes. Level 18 Chargla turns up as well. Level 19 Chargla, you can see where this goes. You can very quickly get your Charglas into unbelievable territory. He's essentially given up at this point, so we are just going to cycle stuff as much as possible to get more Charglas out. And you can see at the end, we end up getting a level 20 Chargla onto the field and taking down his base, which is very good. All right, I'm going to show you a Alterac Valley game versus Rend now. And again, in this situation, just Chargla in your opening hand, just start cycling up as much as possible. Now, I generally tend to like to send my range units and my flying units over the top of the bridge, because it just means you can attack things below the bridge as well. I'm actually going to I'll try and go for both the chests. I don't really mind Rend going for Chargla there. We're just kind of securing both chests in this instance. He's gone for like a very kind of a very odd opening. We also have really good responses to Gargoyle. I know we don't have any elemental damage, but we have Vultures, and we also have Murloc Tidehunters. We also have Griffin Rider. So that, even though that is an armored flying unit, it's going to take a long time, or like, it's going to really struggle to actually get to the base and deal significant damage. We have got a lot of anti-air in this deck. Actually, versus Rend, we're pretty good. Like, we've got lots of anti-air. We can turn Rend with Quillbore. We've got Safe Pilot. We've got Chain Lightning for well pegs. Like, generally have a pretty good Rend matchup, especially if you're running this kind of weird Gargoyle Rend where, well, it's not weird Gargoyle Rend. Makes sense to run Gargoyle, but obviously just can't really get through the onslaught of minis that we've got. And you can see, just look how many minis we're starting to stack up near this guy's base. We've sent everything over the bridge. We're now just spamming stuff. Like, look how much we're just randomly spamming towards his base at this point in time. Like, we have got an absolute mass of minis, and I'm just constantly sending stuff towards his base. Like, he has no gold left. Look at how many minis I've got. I've got so many minis. There's like 50 minis. Oh, that was a quick one. And it really didn't take much skill. I just spammed. There you go. Okay, so this is versus a Baron. So let's have a look at this Baron game. So once again, Chargla down the middle. The reason I like Chargla down the middle is she's slow moving, and she'll get there by the time the chest spawns. It's just basically a nice way of dealing with the chests. We're going to turn this Baron round with the Quillbore. We do get safe piloted on top of our head, which does end up killing up our Chargla. We send another Chargla down the middle, but it's a little bit slow. That means we end up losing both of the chests. So kind of a bit of a poor move, a poor opening move on our start, our point really. And we are going to use, obviously not as good versus Dark Iron Dwarfs now that we don't have Bristleback, but that's okay. Like, the Quillbore still wins that matchup versus the Dark Iron Dwarf, but just maybe not as convincingly as it did before, especially when you're getting slowed down permanently. Now, this guy's playing like a Cycle Baron deck, so everything in his deck's kind of designed to just cycle Baron out, which is fine. That's perfectly good. He's actually set up for a really nice safe pilot for me here, which is what I end up doing. We get really good value out of that safe pilot. I'm actually also going to turn this ghoul away from my Charlga, because I just don't want the ghoul to get a Charlga kill for free. Now, I do actually, unfortunately, send a kobold to his death for no apparent reason, but sometimes that just happens, doesn't it? So he's going to mine this gold. It's very difficult versus Dark Iron Miner players to, especially on Alterac Valley, to actually compete with how much they can mine. That's just an issue that you kind of got to deal with if you're playing this deck. You don't have Dark Iron Miner, so you just have to hope that you have good like map control. We do end up getting a pretty good trade there. We take out both the Griffin Rider and his safe pilot. Have to mount a pretty solid defense, but we're slowly starting to take control of the game now. Getting good value trades. Obviously, Baron not particularly good on Bounty Hunt in his own right. The reason Baron is not particularly good on Bounty Hunt is just, primarily because he spawns a lot of minis that count as spawned units on his behalf. So one of those obviously include things like that. Obviously included like the skeletons. They also count towards the Bounty Hunt passive as well. So taking a bit of damage here, but that's okay. We're outscaling his Baron by quite a significant margin. We are level 15 to his level 12 Baron. The thing about Baron is that he's a 4-cost leader, right? Compared to a 1-cost leader for Charlga with the talents. So you're never going to beat a 1-cost leader cycle deck. Storm's Reach, showing why it's useful in this case. Get a bit of damage across the board to everything, which should end up meaning that we end up getting good solid value trades with this Griffin Rider for pretty much everything. And we are now starting to actually threaten his base, which then means we can now start to take control of the gold mines, because he's not going to be able to essentially just put random Dark Iron miners down with no repercussion, because he's starting to take base damage, and he has to kind of like allocate resources between base or trying to compete for resources, which is what becomes more difficult when you've got people attacking your base. You can't just randomly throw 2 gold on you can't just randomly throw 2 gold on your Dark Iron miner. You probably have to spend that 2 gold on defending your base, or doing something else on the map. So this is the point in the game where we've started to like wrestle control of the game, and it is now just a case of just continuously out pushing, out threatening, out damaging him with our very, very high level Charlgas, which is what's going to happen. Now, obviously, we're a little higher level than this guy in general. We've got a +1 level advantage across the board. +1 level is not kind of in that realm where it's completely insurmountable though, which is quite good. Right, we're going to kill. Chain Lightning does help us also take a positive trade versus other Griffin Riders, because basically means that we one-shot them and we don't have to go down to like the 2-shot trade, because often what happens with Griffin Riders of the same level is you throw a hammer, you're both on low HP, you throw your next hammer, you both end up dying. But obviously Chain Lightning, even if you don't one-shot the Griffin Rider, can help kind of make that a little easier and ensure that you get a positive Griffin trade in your behalf. So we are now at level 21 Charlga. And he's at level like 15 Baron. So we've got a massive level advantage from our Charlga, and of course we end up getting towards the base and getting the win. This deck genuinely takes very little skill. You just put stuff on the map and your Charlga levels up, and she does more and more damage and becomes more and more of a problem. It scales really well into the late game. It's got a very viable late game win condition. It's super cool. I hope you guys have fun with it. Please give it a go and let me know how you get on.